Hello, my friends, and welcome into this week's episode of Forte Catholic. Father Anthony Sciarappa is here with me today, and he has once again convinced me to watch wrestling. Oh, good old wrestling. There was a whole family affair. The whole family was watching this old Royal Rumble, and we talk about it. We discuss wrestling and my experience with it, my family's experience with it, what Father Anthony thought, and how this whole scenario relates to how we can be evangelizing better. We also talk about priest voice and maybe some Catholic speaker, some Catholic podcaster voice that can be a little cringe every now and then. We talk about where it came from, why it happens, and what we can do about it. It's a fun conversation. We hope that you enjoy it. If you do, please hit subscribe wherever you are listening on your podcast app, or especially if you're watching over on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the bell. You know the drill. Enjoy today's show. Hello there, and welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is Father Anthony Scaramucci Sciarappa. Hello, Padre.
I totally zoned out right before you started, and that hello there really got me.
Kenobi.
General Kenobi.
We caught him by surprise, I caught you by surprise, just like General Kenobi caught General Grievous by surprise. Mm-hmm. What a start we've had to this year podcast.
Beautiful. That's great.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I just got back from the parish school. It's not a parish school. So there's a school on my campus of my church, but it's not our school because everything's weird. Nothing makes sense. That being said, I went to the third graders and the fourth graders, and we talked about sin and the Trinity and death and hell. The third graders thought I was saying a bad word every time I said hell. I was like, oh, I wasn't ready for this. So it's a little chaotic, but hopefully they learned something. I don't know.
The devil lives in HE hockey sticks, Father.
Yeah, that's what I should have done. They were just like losing their dang minds over the fact that I said hell. The teacher was like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah. It's in the Bible. Just like you're an ass. Ass is in the Bible. I mean,
absolutely.
So those other words you can't say. They didn't invent those big ones until many years later.
Yes. Hell's not a bad word. It's just a place your parents are going to go because none of them take you to mass on Sundays. I think that's fine. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I'm starting. I don't know if I should say what I was about to say, but never mind.
Prudence wins.
Prudence does win. I think there's only a couple of things I can say that actually hurt your feelings, and that might have been one of them. So we're just going to move forward and talk about something that you actually enjoy. Are you ready for that?
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. Not WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble happened recently. And you and I we had been texting. We were on the phone a couple of times because like I'm coming to see you again this summer. Hooray, it's happening. So we were kind of coordinating that. And somehow through text and over the phone, you were like, Royal Rumble is happening this week, back in the weekend that it happened. And I was like, okay, I can watch this. And so I put it on the calendar. And my wife's first reaction because we share a calendar, and she's like, why is Royal Rumble on the calendar?
who are we fighting? What's going on? Are there lords and ladies coming to battle us? What is happening?
Yeah, exactly. Honey, be prepared. I've got the shotgun. You take the pistol. It's coming, and it's on the Google Calendar. Which that'd just be such a funny like modern war thing. It's like people go to war with people that used to be their allies. You accidentally put it on the Google Calendar, and they're like, "Hey,
wait a second, they're gonna attack us! What a bunch of jerks!"
But I shut down that email account, But put it on the calendar, and I didn't really even think about it. I had it on the calendar just in case we didn't have anything else to do. Like it wasn't like on the top of our priority list, But football seasons had been winding down. The playoffs were winding down. So we had our on that weekend there were playoff games only on Sunday, where the previous few weeks in the playoffs there was games on Saturday. So like if there was a Saturday football game, that's what I would have been watching, but there wasn't. So I was like, you know what? We've got nothing better to do. And I didn't honestly think it through until for us it started at 7 p.m. Central. So I think it was a little later for you, but 8 o'clock is the kids' bedtime on school nights. It's usually around 9-ish on the weekends. This is a weekend.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, if their bedtime was 8:00, I'd just watch it by myself. But now they're not going to go to bed for 2 hours. So I texted you a very important question right at the beginning. Do you remember what my one question about whether my family could watch this was?
Oh, are there going to be swears?
Yes.
Are there curse words? Yeah.
Are they going to be saying a lot of hockey stick words, or are we?
Yes. I said not on purpose, but there may be, if like the wrestlers are mic'd or if they pick up something, there might be something, but it's not like they go all out, or it's not like,
sure, which like is
90s.
pretty similar to the NFL, which like we watch together as a family, especially me, my wife, and my son. But the girls are in and out all day because like during football season, we have it on all day Sunday, right? Whether we're actively watching it, like it's just on, whether we're glued to the TV or like working here on the computer and watching it in the background. And it's the same kind of thing. It's like the announcers aren't going to cuss, that like, they'll show people mouthing words that are that look like the word vacuum, but it's probably not what they're saying. And then maybe every now and then, if there's a live mic, a guy will walk by and say a word that he shouldn't say on national television. But you can't really help those. So I was like, okay, if that's the same thing, that's fine. Ironically enough, the only person who cussed was the NFL person. I don't know if you even picked up on that. I did, because it was a big focus of mine. Pat McAfee, who's an ex-NFL player and current, like sports media sportscaster guy. He's the only one who cussed throughout the evening. I was like, Pat, chill out, man. My kids are here.
That's funny. I was like half listening. I really wasn't listening to the commentary much throughout the night, so I must have missed that one. Yeah.
Right. So I started watching it, and this is a follow-up to this past summer when we were together and we watched, was it WrestleMania? Is that the thing that we watched?
Did we watch? Yes, it was WrestleMania then. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we had watched that one.
It was one of the big ones. Yeah, it was one of the big ones.
Yeah. So the recap for those of you who didn't listen last summer, but essentially it was like I had never watched wrestling before as an adult, like maybe as an 8-year-old, but I never like actively watched wrestling. And I fought Anthony about it for years, and I finally gave in and watched it, and I had a so-so experience. Like I was very confused. I didn't really know what's going on. You were very kind for the first half, and then the second half you got annoyed with me being a jerk because maybe I was being a jerk, and but it ended up being this like, it was kind of a 50-50 experience of like I really enjoyed some parts, and I was really like, the reasons that I don't like wrestling were very apparent in that. I was like, that was clearly fake. That was clearly scripted. Like all these kinds of things. Like it's just certain things kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but it was enough apparently. And I didn't really know this. I didn't search my heart until Royal Rumble when you were like, hey, you should watch this. And I'll be like, okay, I'm open enough to take this next step. And both you and the commentary team were actually very helpful to us. Like you answered some of my questions. They were answering a lot of my questions. And so we felt like we were like, entering into the RCIA process as a family into the wrestling world. It was very fun.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, Taylor, I the only reason why I brought up the Royal Rumble was to like irritate you. Like I really was not trying to get you to watch at all. Like I didn't think you would. And you mentioned it like a couple times. And then like the night of, you sent me this text. And I'm like, is this actually going to happen? I had given up all hope. Like I had no idea. And then you were like asking me questions every once in a while, like throughout the night. I'm like, he's still watching? What is going on?
Oh, it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me. It was me and my whole family. We got so into it. It started at 7:00 at night and ended at 11:00 at night. And the times before that my children were allowed to stay up that late on weekends were like, if we were traveling, and even if we were traveling, like it was like we were driving back and they were asleep in the car anyway, right? Or it's like my two sisters' weddings, they got to stay up till 11. Or like something real, like the Astros winning the World Series, they stayed up till 10. Like there have been, like I could probably count on two hands the amount of times my kids have been allowed to stay up until 11, and it's because we were doing something as a family, and the thing that we did as a family for 4 hours was watch Royal Rumble, and all 5 of us were thrilled. We were so entranced. We loved it. We just loved it.
That makes me so happy. It was a great show. It was a fun show, and the Royal Rumble is definitely one of the most fun live events that they do. It's unique. It's exciting. We're getting into like kind of like the postseason of wrestling, if you will, with the Super Bowl being WrestleMania, and this is like the beginning of the playoffs basically. And it's a lot of fun. So I was glad you sent me a picture of your son, and he's like leaning over the table, standing up, like staring down the TV. I'm like, yeah, of course he likes it. He's a dude. Like this is this is good. This is good stuff.
And that was at like 10:15 p.m. and he's still like locked in, like even the girls loved it. So the Royal Rumble starts with like an hour and 30 minutes of all these girls essentially fighting each other. And my girls were just absolutely loved it. Like at 10:30, because they did the girls Royal Rumble, and then they did like these 4 guys battling for a thing. That was the most confusing part of the thing. And then I was like, Roman wins. That's all I really needed to know. And then they did the Jake or Logan Paul. I don't know which one, but one of those Paul brothers fought a Hick, and that was fun.
That's accurate. Kevin Owens, yes.
And then they did the men's Royal Rumble, and like when the men's Royal Rumble was almost done, it's 10:30 at night, and my littlest daughter, it's 10:30 at night, and she's like, "When are the girls coming back?" I'm like, "No, girl, baby, we already watched the girls for an hour and a half." She was so sad that the girls was like so. Oh. Anyway, it was just fun for the whole family. And I only have 2 bones to pick, and I'll pick one of them now. It's something that you just said a moment ago. You said that this is the best wrestling event of the year, at least in your opinion.
It's a fan favorite. Yeah, it's not the biggest, but it's a big one, and it's a fan favorite. Yeah.
My only bone to pick with you is why didn't we start here? Because you would have won me over so much quicker. This event is 1,000 times cooler than what we watched together this summer. 1,000 times cooler. There's just nothing like, especially for like a new budding fan. Like this was like, I got introduced to everybody. There were 75 fighters in this 4 hours, and they're coming in every 90 seconds. There's always action happening. Like one of the things I kept complaining to you about was just like there were just lulls in a lot of these fights. Right, they're 15 minutes, and it's like how many times can you fake tap somebody out at 2.5 seconds? It gets old. But when there's 90 people fighting at once, it's just like, hey, I like her. Boo, I hate her. Boo, they're from Canada. Yay, we know her from the summer. Or yay, we know her from the trivia games or whatever. So like, we got super into it. And I'm mad at you that this isn't where we started. You didn't put your best foot forward.
You know what? It's because once again, I wasn't trying as hard as I should have been. Like the night that we watched wrestling, like,
a Father Anthony story.
yeah, just not trying hard enough. Because it was a party at my brother's house, and wrestling was on, right? So there's a lot of hanging out and stuff. But at a certain point in time of the night, I'm like, I'm gonna go watch this because I'm invested in these stories and everything. And so it just happened to be that you were there as the party kind of moved towards the TV. You came along with it, so it was kind of like like wandering into like a boring daily mass where you're like, what is going on? None of this makes any sense to me. Whereas the Royal Rumble, you're right. You get to see people. You make immediate snap judgments about them. Stuff is always moving, always happening. It's definitely a lot more exciting in that way, which is why it's one of the favorites. Because you never know who's going to show up next, who's going to win. It's great.
It was so much fun, and I think because somebody was introduced every 90 seconds, like a new person entering the ring, it's like the announcers had to like explain who this was and like explain some of the background. Obviously, we're new watchers. We don't know all the background between all these people, but they were able to say like, oh, this person hates this person. Watch it whenever they get into the ring. Like they're just like, it didn't feel like an insider's event where like a lot of like the SummerSlam or whatever we watched this past summer, it did feel more like an insider's event. But not close to insiders, but as an insider, I didn't feel as welcome or explained or just know what was going on. Yeah. Whereas this one, I felt like this one was like made for us, and y'all could enjoy it too. That's more what it kind of felt like.
Yeah, and I think that's probably purposeful on the WWE's part because, like I said, this is kind of gearing people up for the big money show that's coming in a month or two. So yeah, it's absolutely that, and it's a great time. And I was like overjoyed that your family was having a good time. It's just like it blew my mind every second. I'm there watching with my brother and sister-in-law, and we're doing the same thing. Except it's really fun with watching with my sister-in-law because she always judges the outfits, particularly of the women, and getting her perspective on stuff adds this entirely new dimension to wrestling that I never cared about. So she like judges people solely on what they are wearing and gets very invested in it. And it's like she has her favorites and like it's great. So it's fun for men and women, for the whole family.
Yeah, I won't say that our family was dissimilar to your sister-in-law. It's about all we had to go on was like first impressions and first looks, So I'll share some more things that we liked, and then I'll share the final beef, and then we'll. I think we have a pretty pretty good connection to our faith and stuff, which we'll get to. People might be figuring it out already, but we'll see how smart our listeners are. Okay. One thing that I was not expecting that I really enjoyed was that, like, for every other fighting sport I've ever watched, like MMA and boxing, those are the two primary ones that I've watched before. Like, and now entering the ring at 4'8". I don't know why they're that small. At 5'9", 220 pounds. Father Anthony Sciarappa, and then they get to the let's get ready to rumble. Like, that's what we're all kind of used to, and the fact that we got exactly that, but from a woman, was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced in my life.
Oh yeah. What's her name? Samantha, I think. She's an amazing announcer. Like, she is super intense, enthusiastic all the time. She's brilliant. She's great at announcing all those things, and just same like intensity as any other announcer you've heard, ring announcer. Yeah, she's another favorite. She's great.
There was also sticking with the women as a talking subject. One of the things that like made my heart leap, and it took me a while to figure out why, but now once I figured it out, I know exactly why. Is if you've ever interacted with me at all, there's a lot of yelling and a lot of guttural noises, and the fact that every single woman that came into the Royal Rumble, like, they kind of got their moment when they first came into the ring, and they would take down whoever was leading at the time, and then they would and do like this guttural yell. Yeah, and I was just like, my heart would skip a beat. Like, I'd get goosebumps on my arm. Like, what is happening? Why do I like this so much? And I was just like, oh. Like, I found my people. like this. This is what I like in people. I like this guttural yelling, and you don't typically like. Could you imagine Allison Sullivan, Liv Harrison, Catherine Whitaker making those guttural yells? I just can't.
War cries.
Yeah, so it's just not the like world of like the women in my world don't make those noises, and these women were, and it just alivened something in me that I was like, I'm into this.
Well, I'm not going to comment further on that, but
I won't either. Okay. Logan Paul, I wrote down my notes. I know which one it was now.
Yeah.
He has something similar to me. I am similar to Logan Paul in one way, and I didn't think that's a sentence I would ever say, because they're not super likable as a brothership.
No, they're not good people.
But Logan, and you told me this whenever while we were watching him fight, we were texting back and forth, and you said that like he was one of those gimmick guys, and like another like gimmick guy that I liked was like one of the only reasons why I knew who CM Punk was, who actually ended up doing very well and was one of the last two people in the Men's Royal Rumble. The only reason I knew who CM Punk was is because the Green Arrow from the CW show, The Green Arrow, Stephen Amell, had this like beef with CM Punk. So like Stephen Amell would come to wrestling events and they would fight, and they were all this kind of stuff, right?
Right. So, yeah, that was a thing of years back. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a fun for me, but it was pretty clearly a gimmick. Like Stephen Amell like looks like these wrestlers. Like he's in such good shape. Like one of the reasons most guys watch the Arrows to watch him work out and like aspirational, and the reason my wife watched was also to watch him work out for different reasons. So like he started off as one of these gimmick guys, kind of like what's his name, the announcer, Pat McAfee. Like he was a gimmick in the middle of the. He went in to go fight, and then he saw this huge guy, and then he ran away, and he didn't even end up fighting. Like clearly a gimmick, but like fun, right? Well,
celebrity appearance, Mm-hmm.
Logan was a gimmick, but not fun because nobody likes those Paul boys. But like by the end, like he's the real deal. He looks the part. He's incredible on the mat. He's super athletic. He's rocked out. He looks like Jake Gyllenhaal in these boxing movies. Like he looks incredible. He's doing so well. Like he won me over. I came into the evening hating him, and he won me over.
I hate how much I love him in wrestling. Even his promos and his interviews and stuff. He's amazing. Of course, he's good at talking. His character work as acting like a bad guy, of course, is great, and he's so good. It's insane. He's a prodigy. He's actually just signed up to like be full time in the WWE. And he's actually one of their champions. They don't put championships on celebrities. It's not a thing that they do. They do like the gimmick matches, right? But he is just so good. It's insane. It's insane. I'll have to send you more clips of him of doing just insane stuff. And yeah, he has, tons of, he gets tons of respect from the other wrestlers too. I've seen other interviews with him. John Cena was giving him props in an interview, just saying how much he respected Logan Paul and the work he's doing in the WWE. So it's been one of the more confusing things in my wrestling fandom, how like, I love Logan Paul as a wrestler. Like he's the best. It's very confusing for my head and for my heart to see this man be so good at all the wrestling things, all of them. He's brilliant at, and he's like, but I hate him, but I love him. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Here's my final bone to pick. That was all the good stuff. My final bone to pick. I have one issue, and it's similar to an issue from last summer where like, I didn't like when things were clear. Like, I understand that it's scripted and like things are staged, but like when they make it clear that it's staged, it's like, come on, guys, like you could have done better, right?
Yeah. Sure.
There's a man who entered the ring who I'd never heard of before. But when I watched him walk in, my first thought was, why have I not heard of this man before? And two, how did he not win Royal Rumble immediately when he walked into the ring? This man's name is Oso. He's 7'3", 7'4", 400 plus pounds, like probably 6% body fat. Like this man is legitimately Goliath, and no one had a sling and rocks. I don't understand how he lost. And he got into the ring, and literally, I'm just looking at this specimen of a human being, and I'm like, how does he not win this thing? I don't see a way that he loses. And sure enough, he's one of the people that lasted the least amount of time. He got into the ring, knocked some dudes over, like three of the biggest dudes, knocked them over with one arm punch. And then the way that he lost 60 seconds after he got in is he went. Because the way that people get knocked out is they go over the top rope. The only way that he lost is there was somebody in his ear or in the script saying, okay, go lay on the top rope now. And someone just pushed him off. Like no one got him to the top rope because that's physically impossible. Oso should be the reigning champion. He should fight Roman Reigns tomorrow, steal his belt, and then pummel Roman Reigns into the mat. Like there's just no reason that man is not the greatest fighter alive. There's no way.
There's a few things. One, he is an insane. His like stage name, if you will, is Omos, and all of these wrestlers, all of them are huge men. Like they are giant men, and he made them all look like little boys. Like seriously. that was my comment. Like they all look like little boys next to this man.
They all looked huge until he walked in, and then we're like having to re-gauge our entire understanding of the human race.
Yes, yeah, it really is. It breaks your brain. But there's a history of this in the WWE and in wrestling in general, that those guys, they don't get titles because you'll pay just to see them. They don't need a title to make them big. Like this was true with Andre the Giant, who was the Omos of his era. He almost never had a title. But you just paid to see this specimen of human being. So it's kind of a booking. I totally get where you're coming from. Like, yeah, he should destroy everybody. And there's always that threat that he might. Right? That's part of like he could, he might. Look how giant he is, but they never give those guys the belts for long, unless you're counting Brock Lesnar, which he's held titles for forever, and he's a terrifying looking human being as well. But he looks small in comparison to Omos. Like they had a feud. I'm like, how do you make Brock Lesnar look like a little boy? And it's insane. So you know what? I'll give you that one. That's a tough thing to swallow there. Like there's a lot of suspension of disbelief in wrestling. You have to enjoy it, but I can see how that one would push it.
It was the one like, and what's crazy is like I felt like that way of like there's no way, like I even understanding that it's scripted and all this stuff, I was just like, I don't see a way out of this scenario, right? And like there was like it would happen maybe 30 to 40% of the time in that first one that we watched. This was the only thing. Like everything else worked. Like I felt it only 1% of the evening. And I watched for 4 hours. So like over the course of 4 hours, like it was just a way better event for me as a skeptic. But that was the one time I'm like, the only way that he lost is he went and took a nap on the top rope. Like I could have pushed him over. You know what I mean? Like when you're laying on a rope, okay, just go shove him and he falls off. Like, okay, fine. But I don't know, man. I was just like, the dude should win. And like, I get what you're saying. Like, cause like, right when you said that, I was like, oh, Andre the Giant. But like, he has to win at some point because I called him a word that I won't say here on the show, but like at some point he becomes a joke. And like to me, he came in as the coolest person and he left as a joke, which I don't think is fair to him. I think he needs to be like, become the champion in something, the heaviest of heavyweights. And that, maybe that's why, maybe they give him a belt for the 450 plus pound people because he's the only one. Like, I don't know. But I just feel like you need to give him the trophy once so that, because then it would be a cool story that David knocks out the Goliath. You could do something like that. But like the fact that he went out faster than almost everybody else, like freaking Rey Mysterio's son, who Rey Mysterio was like my favorite person. I don't hate anybody alive more than I hate Rey Mysterio's son, and I only hung out with him for an hour. I hate that little guy. I hate him, and he helped get the big guy out. I'm like, he's half my size.
That's the brilliance of Rey Mysterio's son, is that he is the most hated guy in the WWE. Like literally, oftentimes wrestlers will grab a mic, cut a promo, talk in the ring. Every time he touches the mic, you cannot hear a word he is saying because the stadium boos him so much. He is the best bad guy in the WWE because everyone hates this, because his dad is a legend and such a good guy, and he's this sniveling dude who is he's in storyline dating this beautiful badass woman, and everyone just hates him so much. So the fact that you only had a few glimpses of him and you immediately hate him is just proof of his genius.
I didn't have a few glimpses. Really he lasted an hour and 10 minutes, and meanwhile the Giant got knocked out in seconds.
True.
Stupid.
But I get your point. Yeah.
Okay, that's my last bone to pick. Overall, having 2 bones to pick over 4 hours, it was just an incredible experience. And I started thinking about how well you evangelized me into wrestling, right? And I started thinking about how it worked. And for years, I made fun of you and made you feel like a nerd loser for years. Yeah. And I think a lot of people make their Catholic friends feel that way. You stupid idiots. You wasted your Sunday morning. You're going to some 2,000-year-old thing. Don't you know it's all fake and staged and scripted?
It is scripted. There is a script to
it. And so you did a very good job of just, you had your joy. That's the main thing, is this is something that you love and you enjoy, and nothing that I could say would ever make you go away from it. If anything, it made you push it even harder. And then we kind of got to I was thinking a lot about the RCIA, because our friendship is the way that I first even talked. I would never have talked about wrestling at all, just because it's not part of my world. Nobody in my life really cares until you came along, and then you started talking about it, sharing about it, and then finally we had this big thing this summer that was a mixed bag. I think we both came away feeling very mixed about the situation. I came away mixed about wrestling. I came away mixed about how I handled it. I came away mixed about how you and everybody else in the room handled it. It was just a mixed experience, some good, some bad. And then I had this great experience where I was sharing in your joy. You were sharing in your joy. You were like, hey, this thing's happening. I'm watching it. I invite I find out it's family friendly. The whole family watches it. It becomes this super enjoyable event. You're thrilled. I'm thrilled. My daughters are into it. Now I don't think I've told you this part yet. Now, anytime we're watching TV and a WWE commercial comes on, my kids flip out and get super excited. They're so-and-so. They're so-and-so. They're just super into it. All because primarily you did 2 things. 1, you shared your joy and you never backed down from it. 2, you answered questions, which is a lot of this beginning of the RCA process. When people come to the RCA process, they're like, God's not real. How is God real? And then Father Anthony and the team has to answer that. Or, this is all fake. Prove that it's not. Or why are these people doing this? Why is that guy a bad guy? They're asking all these similar questions in RCA, and then we just answer them. And so I'm not a wrestling fan, right? But I feel how there's the if you start RCA, you're 2 weeks in, and then you get killed. It's this baptism by desire, right?
Oh yeah,
I'm not a wrestling fan yet, but if I died today, it could say on my tombstone an aspiring wrestling fan, right?
I hope they don't put that on your tombstone. I think you deserve better, but sure, yeah. So Schroll, aspiring wrestling fan, that sums up your life.
You know what? I'm putting it in my will. That's all I want. Because it's funny. Because it's funny. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. I'm saying it right now here publicly. If I die before the age of if I'm under the age of 50, if I die at 49 and 364 days, that's what has to go on my tombstone. And I want all of the listeners to hold my wife to that. While she's in mourning, I need you all to help out.
It's like, Sam, I know this is really tough, but like, Sam, trust me, this is funny. This is like really funny. We gotta do it. We gotta do it. It's like hilarious. Come on. You know what though? I will say this. I teach RCA. I'm going to teach it later tonight. And I will say this, it is easier to make someone a Catholic than to make you a wrestling fan. Because at least most people who enter RCA are like kind of vaguely on board, right? Like they usually believe in God and they're searching for something, right? At least in my experience the last 3 years. You were totally against this thing.
Yeah.
So it was definitely harder.
In this, for this to comparison to work, I was a Satanist.
Yes. Exactly. That's the more accurate thing. But it's true because, it was one of those things where like I would just occasionally invite you or just by talking about it or bringing it up or saying this is a thing that I'm doing, and it wouldn't be all the time, but like this is a part of my life as a hobby, a thing that I watch. And in a lot of ways, I mean, like you said, it was your trust in me, in our friendship, that brought you to be slowly open to this thing. And really, it's the same thing with the faith. Like, it's for RCA, the people who are brought in, it's because their, fiance is into the faith, or for this one family, their daughter goes to Catholic school, but neither of them are Catholic, and their daughter loves it so much, it drew them in, right? So it's that relationship that allows them to, trust the process and be open to it. It's like, I'm not sure about this Catholic thing, but I do trust you, and you seem to really like this thing or love this thing. This is a huge part of your life, and I like you, so that's there's something there. And that's really how normal evangelization works.
Right. Yeah, and I think I've said the two primary things. I think you're right. I think it's building trust, building relationship, but like sharing the joy no matter what, no matter how hard the other person's pushing against you, and realizing that's like that. Sharing the joy constantly, despite people being maybe rude about it, is actually what helps win people over. And then two, like the one thing, because like you're teaching RCA, I'm teaching this foundations course literally both tonight as we're talking about this. And like the one thing that I kept thinking about was just like, you didn't do a lot of, you actually tried. You tried to teach me wrestling and it didn't work. Whenever we were at your brother's house, hours before, you showed me like a 40-minute video about like backstories, and I could not care any less. It actively made me angry. Made me angry because I'm like, this is stupid, and I feel like you're forcing this on me, right?
I showed you a formed video out of nowhere, basically.
Yes, exactly. You were trying to catechize me before I was evangelized, but what worked was as we sat and we watched it together, and I would ask a varying array of questions, from serious to stupid to like pointedly being a jerk, and you would answer all of them, right? And so there's just so much more to answering people's questions, like in conversation while doing the thing together, more than trying to like, hey, let's go into the deep cuts, because that's essentially what it was. It wasn't an intro to wrestling. It was, let's go through 12 years of backstory for these 9 characters. I'm like, I don't care. I don't know who these people are, So, but like, so I don't know. I think there's a lot of parallels for like what you did well is what we need to do well as a church, and what you didn't do well is actually what we do as a church more often. We try to catechize, teach the deep stuff before we're like, hey, what do you think about this? Let's just try this together. And let's put our best foot forward and take them to the Royal Rumble, and not the stupid random Friday one that we watched or whatever it was.
Yeah. It's funny because it's what I was going to say about that. It's like a lot of times, like, we want to tell other people what we think they should know. It's like, this is the thing that matters to me. You should know this thing, instead of being like, what would you like to know? Do you have questions that like arise from your hearts? And if you can touch on those things, then that makes them more open, other than like, because so often we get so excited. And this is sometimes a danger with RCIA teams, that we'll be talking about something, and then someone will bring up this like super deep cut devotion about how somebody was like tortured and killed, but it's actually really awesome. And all of the like this person on the team is like really excited about this thing, and I look and I see our catechumens and candidates, and they're horrified and confused faces about why are we talking about this, right? And like I have that everyone, because we're excited about all the Catholic things, but being patient, listening to what the person is actually interested in, and answering those questions. That's what matters.
Right. We're not even sure if we're down with Fatima yet. Why are you bringing up Medjugorje?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who's Mary? And like, what do you believe about her?
Exactly.
Actually, she showed children a vision of hell. And don't worry, it's cool though.
No,
what? No,
hockey
you
sticks.
can't start
she
there.
showed children a vision of hockey sticks.
Yes, hockey sticks. Sorry.
All right. Well, I want you to be very proud. As I look now, we just did a double stuffed segment about wrestling, 34 minutes, which is double what a normal segment should be on the show.
I was thinking about it the entire time, like we're still talking about wrestling. This is amazing.
I want you to be very, very proud. So whenever we come back as punishment for your crimes, I'm going to make you do something very silly. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're going to try a quick and fast commercial once again. I am once again asking you for reviews for the podcast over on Apple Podcasts, especially 5 stars, 2 sentences. It'll take you a few seconds to do that while you're listening to the next segment. Super easy for you to do. Very helpful for us. We would truly, truly appreciate it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Right back to the show. I'm being nice to you. Be nice to me. Enjoy the rest of the show. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is Father Anthony Scaramucci Sciarappa. What was the bad nickname I gave you last month that you didn't like?
Oh, I think it was something like Irish. You started doing like Irish or English names, maybe that bothered me. Like, it wasn't like your regular
Mick Sciarappa or something like that. And you hated
it was something goofy like that. Yeah, that got to me.
Anyway, whatever I said then, insert that into your mind now. That's how I want you going into this segment. I built you up for 35 minutes, and now I have to tear you down. So I was just listening to a podcast. I've talked before on the show. I don't know if I've talked with you at all, but I like about my love for Malcolm Gladwell and how even if I don't agree with everything he says, he makes me, as a thought leader, he makes me think about my own positions more than anybody I listen to. Have I talked to you about him at all?
You've talked to me about him. I don't think so on the show, but yeah, you've mentioned him before.
So people push back on it. It's like, oh, he's not Catholic. I'm like, neither are you. Shut up. You know, like leave me alone.
He's not trying to be Catholic. You're just a bad one.
Yeah, you're just bad at it. You know, he's better at doing what he has chosen to do than you are at doing what you chose to do. So I was listening to his podcast called Revisionist History. It's one of the top podcasts in the world. You know, he has all these these books. I've listened to a lot of his audiobooks. So a lot of what he says challenges me. Like he will. Like he's a little bit more left-leaning than I am, but he makes me rethink a lot of my positions and either get stronger on my positions or change a little bit. Like that's just how, I don't know. I think it's a good thing that you have some thoughts challenged every now and then. But anyway, I listened to his full season. It was kind of a tough season. It was about guns and gun violence. So there was a lot of like very difficult stories to hear. And after that season released, they did some like retrospective on the season and like even like they kind of let people challenge them on some of their assertions. Like it's just a cool, I don't know. I like the whole process of it. Yeah. But after that season ended, there was somebody else, and they do this a lot in like podcast networks. And I think his podcast network does a very good job of like promoting other people who like aren't as popular. So this other guy had this podcast and it was about pilot voice. So like aircraft pilots. So there's for some strange reason, like what voice pops into your head whenever I say pilot voice?
Pilot voice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and we'll be heading out in about 45 minutes here. Headwinds going. Maybe we'll get you there a little bit earlier. Buckle up and blah, blah, blah. Like something like that. It's not great. Right. I'm not a great impression guy.
Congratulations. We have a clapping sound effect of me clapping my hands together.
But people, you get the gist. Yeah. They do the and the
It's one of the things I've never noticed because I stopped listening to them years ago. I just put my AirPods in and I'm gone the moment I sit down on the plane. You know, like, oh, this is how you save your life if you crash. I'm like, we're all going to die if we crash. I don't really care what you have to say.
There's no.
Are you Sully Sullenberger? Then no, I'm not going to listen to you. So, but as I'm listening to this, they were doing examples, like almost exact, like there was a pretty good impersonation that you were doing. Yeah. There's this like Southern kind of nature to it, which like is every pilot from the South? No. There's this they had there was a female pilot on it that they had her do it. I'm like, this sounds weird. Like Like, it's just not a thing, right? And it's not that like, they were even talking about, like, it's not this sexist thing. Like, maybe there's some like deep rooted sex. Like, why are all pilots large, tall white men? And why do they all pretend like they're from the South? Why do these people who have to be pretty smart to do all the things that they're doing sound dumb? Like, if I was editing their talk, I could edit their 2-minute conversation down to 90 seconds because they ummed for 30 seconds. Like, there's just this, why is anything the way that it is? Like, that's essentially what this podcast was exploring. And they threw out some things. Apparently there was this famous pilot in like a TV show that everybody's kind of mimicking. But then like, even at the end of the episode, there was no real explanation for why this is the way that it is, other than the fact that everybody does it. And that became this, like, the point. The point, what is the pilot trying to get across? They're trying to make you feel safe because they said in varying degrees, whether you fly all the time or this is your first time flying, there's just varying degrees of like, hey, we're all going up in a metal tube that can explode 40,000 feet up into the air. Like, you want to help people calm down, right? Like, that's a big part of the thing. It's how they were taught. Like, whoever's training them is like, for whatever reason, uniformity gives us comfort. And the slow nature of them talking, and I heard a lot of these pilots, some of the is that while they're doing the announcement, they're also like flipping all those buttons and levers. So they're thinking about other things. But also some of them said that they do it longer on purpose because the slow nature communicates we're chill and relaxed, so should you. It was fascinating. Fascinating.
It is fascinating. That's true. I never thought of it, but if there was like a really like peppy like pilot who got on the thing was like, hey, let's get ready to fly an airplane. This is going to be fun. I'd be like, oh, get me off the plane. I don't trust this guy.
That's Spirit Airlines.
Yeah, like, oh, something is terribly wrong. There's something about like, that slow voice, but also like the fact that that's what you hear. Like, I've been on flights before. That's what a pilot sounds like when I've lived through a flight. He sounds like that again. I feel like I'm going to live through this flight again. I think, I never thought about it that way, but there's something to that.
It's this weird thing. Like there could be some pushback about some, it's not a foreign voice. It's not a female's voice. It's not a northern, like there's some pushback against it. That's fair. But also it's like a lot of jobs hire based on like physical looks. And like, you don't see the pilot. So the only way that they're able to communicate that this is the same as every other flight that you live through is the voice. It's just this fascinating thought experiment of like, because Malcolm's trying to attack it. Like he's trying, they're trying to say like, oh, there's something wrong with this systemically. Why is it white men? Why is it not women? Why is it? And like, even the female pilot, she was so funny. She was joking, like, even when she does it, she's still trying to imitate, like, she's not trying to sound like a man, but she's still doing the so she's, like, even she is trying to sound as much like what we're used to. Her last name is Stahl. So even she's smart enough to say, because usually they'll say like, hey, this is Captain Taylor speaking, and I'm so glad that y'all are here at this American Airlines flight. She doesn't even say her last name because no one wants to hear the word stall right before they go up into a plane.
That's amazing.
So it got me thinking, because like right whenever they said pilot voice, I had never really thought of it or heard of pilot voice, but immediately I knew what it was. And I knew exactly what it sounded like. Right. But then two, I thought about priest voice. We all know that priest voice is a thing. What is priest voice for those who are
see? I think it's a little bit more varied. I think, well, it depends. First of all, I can't keep out of my mind this scene of little Jimmy Croshendie who wants to be a pilot but never can because of his last name. But moving that aside, priest voice, like priests do this thing where like they talk like however they talk, but once they start doing mass, their voice changes. And a lot of times it becomes a little bit slower, a little bit more, not even slower, but I think we try to sound more profound and it comes across as odd. Yeah. And like in attempting to sound more profound, you sound like weird and not human. But the thing is, if you don't deal with that or fix that in seminary, no one's ever going to mention it to you ever again. And
I will.
It just, oh yeah, you will. Yeah, you say all kinds of stuff nobody does. You know, you're an outlier.
You're welcome.
Like I had one buddy who total yinzer, Pittsburghese all the way. And then when you hear him say mass, like, are you a weird British person? What are you doing? Has no one told you to stop doing that thing? You know? And I was aware like that I definitely, I was either doing readings or proclaiming the gospel. And I'm sure as I was, saying mass as well, that I would take on this, like, I'm trying to sound important because the words are important. But the thing is, you can't hear it yourself. Like, I have no idea how bad my priest voice is. I'm totally like used to it. I at times try to make myself sound more natural, but it takes a lot of work because you instinctually try to change your voice when you say mass. It's this weird thing, but yeah.
I think over the years that I've known you, you've gotten better at it. You've gotten like, you sound more like Anthony at mass. There's a little bit of Father Anthony, but it's not Father somebody else, like, which I think there was more of at the beginning, which is natural. I'm not attacking you about this at all because it's a normal thing. And I think just like the pilots, they were taught how to do this by somebody who sounded like that. So I would imagine at the beginning of your years, you sounded a lot like here's my theory. We'll see if you agree. You sounded a lot like the people at the seminary that were teaching you. And you probably also sounded like either a priest that you grew up respecting or just other priests that you respected. That's kind of my theory about why you would sound like, or you or anybody would sound like priest voice.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a part of it. Because a lot of priests have priest voice. And so when you're saying the words of a priest, you jump into that. And some of it can be specific to the person. But I think part of it is like your priest voice is born. It comes into the world the first time you practice mass. Right. Because like it's such a weird thing to be just a dude and then you start saying mass. Like it's something that's underappreciated because it's the weirdest thing and most people don't experience it. But like going from a regular guy to saying mass, the thing is, you're still a regular guy, but now you're saying mass, and your brain breaks a little bit when you do that, and this weird voice comes out of your head because it's such a weird thing to do. To like, before my words did nothing, now they make Jesus. I guess my words should sound different, says my like subconscious brain, right? You know, and it's weird.
The words "This is my body" should be different than "Go John Cena" during WrestleMania. That's what you're saying.
Some of it, I mean, there is something to that, right? You know,
I agree with you. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
There'll be some people, some deacons, and some people who preach the gospel, and they'll say it like they're just having a regular conversation, and that bothers me a lot. And then other people go the absolute opposite way, where it's like nobody sounds like that. Jesus didn't sound like that. His apostles didn't sound like that. Why are you being so dramatic and weird? That's not how words and sentences work, right? So it's very odd. I can't quite pin it down, but definitely, yeah, I see your point.
I'm gonna share an example here that might rub some people the wrong way, and because it's something that it's along these same lines. It's something that I used to love when I was young and pious. And now that I'm old and less pious, I don't like it. So there was a pair. I literally talked for years about how much I loved this. And now because of rethinking it, I don't. But when a priest, every mass, I could see if a priest is having a genuine experience of like kind of this wrestling of what you're talking about, of like, I'm a human man and I'm doing this incredible God thing. Like if it's genuine, that's fine. But when it's every Sunday and you're holding up the host and you say, "This is
no
my
no
body." I'm like, Jesus wasn't having a stroke during the Last Supper. He was scheduled to die the next day. Like, you can chill out.
I can't stand the super slow when someone says the words so slowly that the sentence loses its meaning. Like you forgot what the sentence was because all you hear is each individual word and it has no coherent meaning. Stop doing that. Like, the thing is, in the book where we read from, all the words are printed normally, but those words of consecration are in all capital letters.
You have to yell
I think that. Yeah, exactly.
This is my body.
It looks like a Trump tweet right in the middle of a missile. You're like, what is going on? So I think some people like. I think it's just there to make it very easy to read, and as a reminder, these are the words of consecration. Don't mess it up. It doesn't mean sound like a weird pious robot. Like,
right, yeah.
Don't do that. say the sentence, say what it means. Don't just say words. Give meaning, not just words.
Right.
I can't stand that when people do that.
Yeah. So some of it is there's this balance between like, why do people do priest voice? And I'm going to start opening it up to the next conversation. So I'm going to let you, I'm going to let you give me some feedback. Cause like you said, you can't hear priest voice. I want to hear what you think mine is like. I have some thoughts, but again, I'm not someone else. So like my Catholic podcaster voice, my Catholic speaker voice, that sort of thing. Right. So one of the reasons that I think people do this, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, is, or like where it comes from, is like you're doing things, you're mimicking stuff that you've seen work before. That's what we all do in every aspect of life. If I see somebody shoot a basketball correctly and it goes in a lot, and then I see somebody else shoot with their elbow all the way out to the right and they make 10% of their shots, I'm going to mimic the guy that's working. Like, you know what I mean? Like we all grew up, and even now it's like, if I see somebody doing something as a parent or as a Catholic and it's working for them, I'm probably going to mimic what they're doing. And I might even in vocally, I might even sound like them, right? Like I've heard Catholic speakers give great talks. Chris and I just did like a full breakdown of Monsignor Shea's talk from Focus. Like it worked, and I was kind of at a loss of like why it worked, because it's just very different from what I would do. It's good to challenge these things, but also like recognize where they come from. It's like it worked for them, but it won't necessarily work for you. And that's why I think over the course of the years, like I've connected with you as a priest because of you, not your influences, even though they're a part of who you are. Like, so, but like I connect with you as a person. So when I go to your mass, I kind of want you to sound like the person that I've connected with. So there's something to that. So do you like when you hear me talk, do you hear any influences like a Catholic podcaster voice or a Catholic speaker voice, or like, you can be honest. Have you ever heard any of those things?
I'll say I think two things. The way, like when you do get into like podcaster mode, as when you are setting something up or transitioning or doing something, but that doesn't bother me because you're doing a thing. The one thing I do notice is that in real life you are loud, but not in the way you are when you're podcasting.
Right.
In real life, the volume is just turned up. You talk like a normal person. It's just happens to be quite loud, right? Whereas when you're podcasting, it's both loud and energetic. So it's one of those things like, do you realize how loud I'm next to you in the car? Like, do you realize how loud you are? I'm right here, dude. But that's just kind of how you talk. It's fine. It doesn't bother me. But like, whereas podcasting, it's also like the energy that you give to everything. It's amped up. Whereas like, you and sometimes when we have our little genuine chats, when we get like real on the podcast, it'll be more like how we talk in like real life sometimes. But I think it's just the intensity. But that people, when you say you're loud, you are. Your volume is louder than most people's.
Right.
Just it's not always as intense. There's a difference.
Sure, and like that's not a secret. I mean, the show's called Forte Catholic, and that's not a surprise to me. But what's interesting is like there's a difference there between like priest voice or like what I typically hear Catholic speaker voice is. That's just naturally how I am. Like, it's not like I picked that up from somebody else. This is how I've been my entire life, right?
Yeah.
But there was something. Now, I've talked about this before. People think there's people that only listen to the podcast often think it would be weird for me to give a talk at their church or like at a retreat. It's like, it's different, but I'm still me. And I think for years, I was a lot more serious at talks and a lot more like crazy yelly here. And I think both have kind of merged a little bit into like being a more integrated person, just as I've one, gotten older, but two, just like gotten more, like I've just done more podcasts and done more talks. And it was actually Alex Gote, who's been on the show before. And I would do retreats with him. And he yells practically the whole time. And he's not as loud of a natural person as I am. But he started yelling not just the bad stuff, which I've heard before. Whenever I was yelled at in church stuff, it was always like, you suck and you're a sinner. Like those are the yelling talks, right? Yeah. But nobody ever yelled the good news at me until I heard Alex yell the good news at me. And like now that's a huge part of what I do. So I think, again, it wasn't priest voice, but like Catholic speaker voice and somebody that I respect and look up to. And I think that they're talented. It was like, it's not that I'm imitating him, but it gave me the freedom to unlock this part of myself that I had been keeping from people. And like, I can think about literally when I was in Ireland, I'm yelling like the gospel news at them. I'm yelling at them about how like Jesus died and rose again, because we're so used to hearing that I kind of like, my theory is you kind of have to say it very differently for it to set in that a human man was dead. And then 3 days later, he's like, hello. Like, that's a crazy story. And we're just like, yeah, Christ does die. Christ is risen. Christ will come again. No, it's insane. Like, it's an insane thing to say. Yeah. So I know that yelling is another thing, but is there anything else? Any other influences you see?
Yeah, definitely for me, like I definitely have a preaching voice. Like, it's rare when I preach in my normal voice and it throws people off. Sometimes that happens. And thinking about it, like, it's definitely modeled after my spiritual director / who I thought was the best preacher in seminary, where I end up sounding like I'm trying to be someone like much wiser than a 34-year-old should be, and it becomes very grave. And then there's still humor in there, but it ends up being very dry. And I almost like don't care if you laugh or not, and it becomes like this. Like, so it's thinking about it, like I'm trying to be that guy. Now, I'm not trying to be that guy. I just think what he did was effective.
You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
I'm not that guy. Yeah. I don't smoke nearly enough cigarettes to be that guy. But it's because I saw it as effective. Like, people were drawn in to his short homilies, to his long homilies. You knew that every word he was going to say mattered, and the images he was going to say were going to be powerful. And the way he talked, like, helped that. I think I'm drawn to that style of preaching. And so that'll make my preaching voice, which I think even sounds different than my saying the Eucharistic prayer voice, which I think is actually more natural than my preaching voice.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to test this out. We're going to see how well we can do these things. I just texted you. I would like you to pull up what I just texted you. And as I was driving home from giving a talk last night where I yelled quite a bit, and like I sweat through my shirt in 30 minutes. It's ridiculous, like how much energy I give into these things. And maybe that's a problem, but it is what it is, and it seems to work. I got paid, so whatever. All right, the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln. Not the whole thing, but I have snippets from some of the greatest speeches of all time. You can see your phone. That's yes, great. You have it there in front of you.
I have it in front of me.
I would like you to do the first 3 sentences in priest voice from the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this. Okay, it's hard. I got to think about, there's people in front of me. There's an altar here, maybe an ambo. Get into the zone. I always pause for a long time before I start preaching, but I won't do that because that's not good for podcasting. Fondly do we hope. Fervently do we pray that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet, if God wills that it continue until all wealth is piled up by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequested toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword. This is actually hard because I don't know what he's saying.
But it sounds like, I know that it's the Gettysburg Address, but like the content of it is vaguely Christian. So it's like, yes. I was just ported to a mass. I'm laughing my butt off because it's like, this is exactly what most homilies sound like. You're droning on. I don't understand what's happening, but you sound like it. Like when you said drop of blood, I'm like, oh, we're at the Eucharistic prayer. Like,
yeah, exactly. That sounded like an important 3 words. So I had to emphasize those.
It's very funny. Okay. So we're gonna take turns.
Okay.
I now have another one here. This is from. I want you to pick a voice for me. I'm making you do a couple voices. I want you to pick a verse for me. It could be something that we've talked about already today, or it could be a new one that you would like for me to try. So this is. I'll tell you what it is after. What would you like?
I want you to be like your youth pastor, youth minister, trying just so hard to be relatable. Like you're one of the kids, man, just like you, and you're like, but guys, Jesus is really cool. Like he's just so cool, guys.
Okay,
like I want to go for that energy.
I'm not gonna be able to just read this. I'm gonna have to ad lib some here too. All right, guys. So there's this guy, and if we could just stand up to him, like all of Europe, I mean, heck, maybe even all the world, may be free and the life of the world may move forward into broad, sunlit uplands. You know about the sun. You were just on that spring break trip. But if we fail, then the whole world, including our United States, the good US of A, including all that we have known and cared for, we're going to sink into the dark ages, guys. Your cell phones aren't going to work. It's going to be terrible. You're going to lose your Snapchat streak. A new dark age made more sinister. Ooh, scary word. That'd be good for your SAT. And perhaps more protracted by the lights of perverted science. Don't tell your parents I said that word. Naughty. Let us therefore brace ourselves to the duties and so become ourselves that if the British Empire and the Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will say, this was our finest hour. So as we go into this adoration, may this be our finest hour. Amen. Let's bow our heads.
Wow, I never heard Winston Churchill be so relatable before.
Did I say that it was Winston Churchill?
No, that sounds like Winston Churchill.
Oh, yeah, it's 100% Winston Churchill talking about Hitler.
yeah, that's what I kind of pieced that together. I love that. That was very, very good. Because it's funny. The youth pastor voice is like, it's trying to be self-aware, but it goes so overboard that it's completely unself-aware of how dumb it sounds. Right, yeah. Like, hey, we're just talking. We're having a talk. Hey, look at words mean things, and that's funny. And like, hey, and hey, I know you.
We have a relationship. We have one inside joke together. Yeah. Last night.
Yeah, exactly. Don't you want to have inside jokes with me? Because I'm the pastor and I'm really cool. So you want to have inside jokes with me too? We better listen up. It's just like, oh.
Okay, I'm gonna send you another one. What voice would you like to do this one in? Something along the lines of this conversation we've been having. You want to get out of priest voice? Or you want to stick with it?
I want to get out. I mean, let's see if I can do a different voice. I mean, what do you think?
Okay,
I'm willing to try something new.
Let's try to do this one as a good Father Anthony preaching. Like this is you as a 7-8 year priest? 8 this year, right?
7 years, working on 8. Yep.
Yeah. 8 years of priesthood, 8 years of getting away from priest voice, 8 years of trying to make this your own homily. Well, I guess we won't say homily. I guess this would be closest to the gospel. Obviously, we're not saying this is the gospel. Yeah. But it's something that you're reading. You don't have to ad-lib this one, but just read this one as Father Anthony reading the gospel. It's not a joke, but it's not priest voice. Here we go. Just the highlighted part of what I sent you.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. Finally, whether you are citizens of America or citizens of the world, ask us here the same high standards of strength and sacrifice which we ask of you. With a good conscience, our only sure reward. With history, the final judge of our deeds. Let us go forth and lead the land we have, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. That's kind of how I try to read the gospel.
JFK.
Yeah.
Thanks
try to make it sound like something. It's weird to say the words of a serial adulterer in my gospel.
Whoa,
voice.
I didn't know. I wasn't aware. Happy birthday.
He's not
Anthony.
He was not a great Catholic, guys. I know we had him up on all of our.
You know who else wasn't great and had a pretty bad past? Paul. What? He wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, so maybe
he got better. He got better though.
JFK got
killed, though. There's that. Sorry, I feel very bad about this. Sorry, JFK. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hating on the one closest to Catholic we've ever gotten to the White House.
Did you know he got like a bunch of like Jesuit priests to try to figure out a way where he could be Catholic and support abortion? Like he actually like tried to do that thing. He was not a good Catholic.
People these days don't even need help. They just do it.
Yeah. At least Biden's more honest about it. He's like, I don't care.
they don't even ask a priest. They're like, yeah, this is what it is. All right.
Yeah, this is fine.
All right, let's do one more. This is how we're going to close our show today.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read one more here. And what voice would you like me to read this in, my friend?
This is. I'm sure you've experienced this. It's we've asked the teens to share their experience of adoration. And this teen should not be holding a microphone because he's too emotionally vulnerable right now.
Perfect.
And he really wants everyone to know how amazing Jesus is, but he's kind of like not in a good place to say that right now.
Well, guys, when I first came to this retreat, I didn't really want to come. I really wanted to spend some time with my girlfriend, but I've cherished the ideal of a retreat, of a democratic and a free society, here at this retreat, in which all persons will live better in harmony with equal opportunities. And I really think that's what church is all about. It's an ideal for which I hope to live for, and I hope to see realized. Maybe I'll still be Catholic on Tuesday, but my Lord, if it needs be, if it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Drops mic, walks away. That was Nelson Mandela at your local Catholic retreat.
There you go. Now, see, you did a different thing. You did like the teen who's like wants to like say something, but is still like holding back. Have you experienced that teen where like they're about to like cry and they're trying desperately to have everyone feel what they're feeling in that moment, and they should not be holding a microphone. You have to like pull it away from them, but you feel bad about it because they're in such an intense place. You know what I'm talking about?
I see. I have experienced that. What I've experienced more as a retreat leader is someone who shouldn't have the microphone because they're clearly not Catholic, which is kind of what I was playing on with this.
Yes, it's like, that was an excellent version of that. This is all
just about freedom and equity, and maybe we should all just care. And also, I'm prepared to die. And then they give me back the microphone. I'm just like, what am I supposed to do?
What? Are you? What?
So as you were saying it, that's all I could picture was Nelson Mandela walking in as a teenager and being like, what? Did he just say he's prepared to die? We need to check on him.
Yeah, so we're going to talk to him.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I hope this was a fun experiment. I hope this, for me, what it really did was one, I think it made me, because I knew I was going to talk with this about you. I think you've gotten a lot better at it. I think I have the people that I've most copied from actually aren't Catholic when it comes to podcasting. It's like the Colin Cowherds of the world and the Malcolm Gladwells of the world. Like a lot of how I do the show is inspired by how they do their shows. And I don't necessarily talk like them, but I think the one thing that I thought you were going to say that you did not say that I think is 100% true is I podcast like I listen to podcasts. 1.5 speed, everybody. I'm way faster than everybody else, but that's just how my life is. I'm louder and my brain is moving faster than I think most other people's are. I didn't say better. I just said faster. Well, that's our show. Father Anthony, thanks for hanging out today. This is fun.
My pleasure. Good show.
All right. I'm a wrestling fan, and you don't do priest voice anymore, and I just yell the good news at people. That's our show. I'm Taylor Schroll. That's Father McCaffrey Sciarappa. He'll be back in a month. I'll be back next week. See ya! Thank you guys for watching and listening today. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with good old Padre Tony. It's such a good show. I really love hanging out with that guy, and I'm glad that you enjoy hanging out with the both of us. So that you can hang out with us next week, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check out some of our other videos over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Forte Catholic for more podcast talks, Allison Sullivan's podcast, all kind of stuff going on over there. Until next time, love